Hello, thank you for inviting me. I am Dan Winter, fractalfield.com, therify.net, flameandmind.com. This lecture is for the Nutrition and the Eye Symposium, University of Missouri, St. Louis, April 2019, Enriching Lives Through Vision. The title of this lecture is Fractal Charge Implosion, Key Frequencies Ultimately Feed the Eye and Cause Vision. We want to thank and acknowledge Dr. Stuart Richer, iDrRicher.com and OcularNutritionSociety.com for this invitation. Just a wee bit of background. I did undergraduate work, University of Detroit, electrical engineering is sort of my shtick. Graduate work, I did psychophysiology, polygraph, physics of emotion, University of Detroit. Then I was trained as a systems analyst, IBM, Detroit, Chicago, Poughkeepsie. And then for many years, I was an electrical engineer inventor at SS Electric in Buffalo. And then subsequently, many years, I've been a biofeedback inventor. We have 6 apps on the App Store. We'll be talking about that. EKG, EEG, examples, flameandmind.com, iThrive.com. I am the co-inventor of Therify.net, a plasma rejuvenation system we'll talk about a bit, now in 20 countries, which has everything to do with creating vision. I have 20 plus years teaching physics of consciousness on most every continent. Currently, I coordinate groups of global breakthrough technology inventors. You can see more implosiongroup.com, breakthroughtechnologies.com. My book you could see at fractalfield.com. It's called The Origin of Biologic Negentropy, Cause of Negentropy, Gravity, and Perception, Conjuring Life, the Nature of the Fractal Field, and how fractality causes both gravity, perception, and vision, which is the subject of this course. The back of the book, you'll see the harmonics there. We're going to be talking about that. And for social activity in our major blog, and we have lots of fun and many followers, facebook.com/fractalfield. So, here's where we start this lecture. We want to talk about the scientific and really hard physics evidence that focused human attention, literally vision, causes electric fields, causes charge to compress. And this is the book by my old friend, and I should say old quote, William Tiller, Bill Tiller, one of the most famous physicists on the physics of consciousness circuit from Stanford University Material Science Department. His book, Conscious Acts of Creation, clearly and in many ways proved by measurement that if you focus human attention, vision, you cause electric fields to compress. So what is it about focused human attention, literally focused vision, that causes charge to go to be squeezed, to be compressed? That's the question on the table. That is the physics data, which is incontrovertible because so many measurements have been made, that says something about vision is electrically centripetal. And that is what I would hope to chat about today with you. Thank you for coming. So Bill Tiller proved that it was replicable, that focused attention causes field to compress. We later showed that there was a particular wave geometry that enabled that compression, which basically, short summary, golden mean ratio. In wave mechanics, we wrote the actual equations to prove if you want to optimize compression among waves in general, Navier-Stokes equations proved that if you take a bunch of waves in golden mean ratio and nest them, suddenly they start compressing. They enable non-destructive compression. This is going to be key to much of our conversation today. And then later, we're going to talk about that again here, showed that that golden ratio in brain waves was a way of measuring peak vision and peak perception, and we're going to present the evidence today. So we basically think we have an answer to the question, which Bill Tiller didn't, which is how does focused human vision cause charge, cause fields to compress? We think this is a key to understanding vision, and that there's a frequency signature to that, and that's really fun and practically applicable to you, vision specialists, which is why we're here today. So, a little sip of, I am getting over a little cold. So the data is in. Focused human attention causes electric fields charge to compress. No point in hiding your head in the sand. If you are a scientist or electrical engineer like me, if you want to know what electric field causes focused attention / vision, your answer must explain why focused attention causes charge to compress. Simple. So focus attention clearly is measurable as centripetal. So that's great. So in order to know what vision is, we must know the cause origin of electrically centripetal forces. I say that as an electrical engineer. Cool, this is going to be easy, right? What is the other major electrically centripetal force? Oh, gravity, of course. So all we need to know electrically is why objects fall to the ground, and then we'll have learned the cause of vision. Cool, that's going to be easy, right? Oh, wait, what's that you say? We don't have a clue why objects fall to the ground. Oh, maybe that's why we don't know what electric field causes vision. So you're saying, well, you're an optometrist or you're studying vision. You're not studying gravity, but it seems like if you want to know vision, what causes vision, you need to know something about what causes gravity. And unfortunately, our physics community doesn't know what causes gravity. This could get a little embarrassing, I think, actually. In fact, current physics doesn't even have a hypothesis other than fractality, which is a good hypothesis, for what the cause of gravity is, or in fact, the cause, the mechanism, the wave mechanics of any centripetal force. And we claim that life force itself, what causes a seed to pop and germinate, is electrically centripetal force. That's why the title of my book, The Origin of Biological Negentropy, it talks about the origin of centripetal, and therefore negentropic, meaning opposite of entropy, meaning self-organizing. So would a seed ever germinate if it were not electrically centripetal? I think no. So I think physicists have a serious problem, and they should be embarrassed. Okay. So why is charge implosion the absolute key to what causes vision, human focus? That's the question on the table right here, right now. And we only wish to discuss hard and measurable science. This is not subjective. We're only discussing what is objective today. So the background for this conversation and the web article that this is essentially part of or extension of is the original article, fractalfield.com/conjugate perception. This is the background. That's where we present all this data. So next slide. Key frequencies are what ultimately feed the eye. This conference is about nutrition and the eye and vision. I'm saying it's key frequencies. That's the key here. And I want to make that case. So here we go. So this book, it really fired me up. Many years ago, old friend Lawrence Blair wrote Rhythms of Vision, basically saying that there was a rhythm to vision. And if you take that to its logical extension, that means there's a frequency signature defining vision. And that's what I'm here to prove right now. So vision clearly is related to charge implosion, perfected charge collapse. Now you would think that physics, being a bit arrogant, would know the cause of perfected charge collapse. Einstein announced that if he understood perfected charge collapse, then he would have the unified field. Unfortunately, no one ever told him what a fractal was. And now that we know that fractality, mathematically, by definition, is perfected compression, you would think some scientists would have asked the question, what is a fractal electric field? Perfected compression by definition, because then they'd have answered Einstein's dilemma. In fact, we say that perfected compression is the answer to virtually every single problem, social and scientific. For example, urban design, architecture, computers, mathematics, perfected compression cells, how to share space, perfected sharing. And we're even going to say how to get through death, how to do alchemy. Perfected compression is a solution to every one of these problems. Here we go, guys. This could get fun. So, we're saying vision is charge collapse perfected. And I am saying, and this is my new equation, which I'm about to present to you, I'm just presenting it now, that if you start with Planck length and time, which all of physics is absolutely key is the musical key signature of the universe. You go 1,000 light years in any direction, the Planck length and time is the same. Planck length and time is a wavelength in both length and time, into which every wave that physics has ever measured divides evenly. You could call it the key signature of matter. In other words, nothing is smaller. So that is the basics of my new book, Origin of Biological Negentropy. Hello, slight little ad here. This is financial disclosure. I'm advertising my book, fractalfield.com, Origin of Biological Negentropy. Oh, the PDF is free, fractalfield.com, or it's available in print or course, Amazon, whatever. So the core of that book is my new equation entitled The book Origin of Biological Negentropy, which is if you take Planck length and time, the musical key to everything physics knows about, times golden ratio to integer n. In other words, simply powers of golden ratio. In other words, take Planck and keep multiplying by golden ratio, and then you're done. So you are not allowed to tell me that my new equation for the origin of negentropy is complicated, because it ain't. So this is the definition of all fractality. And many physicists already agree fractality is the cause of gravity. I call this recursive constructive adding and multiplying of waves, which is the definition of golden ratio. I call this the conjugation of phases. Let's have conjugal relations, dear. No, phase conjugation. So fractality and phase conjugation are the same thing. It is self-similarity perfected, therefore compression perfected. And this is our key to perception. And oh, by the way, it's a key to gravity too, which just happens to be a little side benefit. Okay, so just presenting a little bit of evidence. So we worked for years. I'm going to present the background. There's lots of history to this, but it turns out that if you measure the frequency signature of brain waves in kids in Russia who are learning to see without their eyes, vision, well documented, Professor Korotkov, my friend, the physicist, was hired to measure the brain waves of all the kids in Russia who were taught in the World Without Blindness project to see without their eyes. His conclusion, we're going to present the chart here in a minute. Slides are not the best sequence, but his conclusion was simple. The key identifying feature, if you want to know the brain waves picture of the kids who are best able to see without their eyes, blindfolded, there's hundreds of videos on the web in Russia. The brain waves make golden ratio between the frequencies alpha, beta, etc. So if the ratio between the frequency peak of the alpha and beta, alpha 8 to 12 hertz, and beta, the higher frequencies. So you take that cascade and you look for that golden mean ratio and those frequencies cascading like a caduceus in the brainwaves, you can identify what kids are best at vision. And we're going to present other data in that too. The mind mirror people also showed golden ratio, and there's lots of history to golden ratio in brainwaves. So this is the basis for our new invention, FlameInMind.com, which is the world's most powerful brainwave biofeedback software, iOS only, FlameInMind.com, to teach vision. Simple little sunglasses. You put on your sunglasses, that's what they look like, and you measure your brainwaves. It's very cool. I'll bring the gadget over here in a minute. So this is me on the screen. This is my brainwaves, and I have discovered at this moment that my new brainwave device is working. And I had a little bliss experience. And when you measure that, here, this is the alpha in green. Here, see the frequency labels. You can see it. So 7 to 12, 13 hertz in green. This is the peak, which is about 8.5 hertz there. So the ratio between the frequencies of the alpha here in green and the theta in yellow and the delta and in the beta, see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 powerful cross-hemispheric coherent harmonics in the EEG brainwaves in golden mean ratio at the moment of peak vision. Hello, do we know what vision is? So what is this golden ratio cascade in brainwaves doing to cause or correlate to peak vision? We call it a flame in the mind, FlameInMind.com. So now in updated versions of this software, let's see if this is this is an animation. This is good. So in updated versions of this software, here you can see there's another golden ratio cascade. We also identify the front versus back brain dominance because we know the famous sports literature called In the Flow, that if you want to be highly reactive, that is, be instinctual and very fast reactions, you need to be in the flow. And in the flow, after lots of research, is defined by when the back brain, amygdala, reptilian brainstem, is dominant. So we display front brain versus back brain, a full channel EEG, in addition to right left hemisphere here. And here you'll see that the the rear brain here, the rear brain in general, we display in white, and the front brain in black. And you can see, in fact, that here we have rear brain dominance. So not only am I having golden ratio of bliss, but I am in the flow. So we're going to talk a lot about this, but essentially, if you take my equation, again, we'll see more detail, Planck and just keep multiplying by only golden ratio, you get this particular cascade of frequencies here, 30 hertz, 19 hertz, 11 hertz, et cetera, et cetera. And notice that that very meaningfully right over here predicts the known published Schumann harmonic cascade. Why is Gaia negentropic? Because it's charge implosive. In addition, though, that harmonic series predicts the center of the normal frequencies of alpha, theta, delta, and so the brainwave harmonics originally were defined by golden ratio as well. In addition, we'll be talking about this later, but it turns out that the lower frequencies of the sacrocranial pulse, the breathing, actually fit this cascade on the right here. So the important point is your spine liquid pump, sacrocranial pump. It's Upledger proved it's clinically impossible to be depressed if your spine liquid is pumping. And your spine liquid pump has these tidal waves, which are well known and published and studied extensively. In the center of the bandwidth of the tidal harmonics of the spine liquid pump are in fact predicted by, again, by my equation. So it's a caduceus snake charmer, you get the metaphor. It's fun and it's profound, and we can measure that not just in the Flame in Mind, but more directly. We measure it in our heart rate variability apps, iThrive.com, ITHRVE.com. So, let's see how long my voice is going to last here. No one can claim to understand what vision is unless they can explain A, focused attention causes charge to compress, B, that synthetic lighting prevents attention. So this is the point of this slide is my old friend John Ott's book, Health and Light, in which he measured and showed replicably that if you take out the poisonous frequencies, the frequencies that do not feed the eye, if you take out the poisonous fluorescent lights from your child's classroom, and the pink light is worse than the blue, there's all kinds of literature. This is very well studied. So if you take out the poisonous fluorescent light and you install sunlight, you then replicably can measure a dramatic increase in attention span, producing vision. That's what this is about. So attention span, the ability to focus human attention, is created measurably, replicably by a frequency recipe. Hello. In other words, sunlight creates attention and synthetic lighting generally doesn't. Well, it turns out actually that our plasma system, 30% of the people in there report sharpening of vision. And it's the same frequency basis of photosynthesis and sunlight. And we're going to talk about that. So phase conjugate charge implosion is a frequency recipe. And if you use it, sunlight example, you can create attention. If you don't use it, the poisonous fluorescent light in your child's classroom, you prevent the possibility of attention and therefore vision. Hello. Frequency signature creates vision. That's what this conversation is about. So it is well known that attention focuses a charge. It's well known that you can create attention with a frequency recipe. I am the first one to explain what frequency recipe causes attention and vision. Golden ratio times powers of Planck times powers of golden ratio, charge implosion, negentropy, causes vision, and we're going to see that in the frequency signature of photosynthesis, which also fits my equation in one moment. So, how does implosive charge compression, phase conjugation, fractality cause perception and vision? How? Here's my equation. Now, this is a bit fine print, guys. Apologies. And this is more physics than you had in mind for today as well. So apologies for that. And you can see all this at fractalfield.com. But I just want to summarize. So if you take my equation, top left, Planck times powers, integer exponents of golden mean ratio, called phase conjugation, defining fractality, you take Planck times golden ratio. What you get are 3 exact radii of hydrogen. You get the exact wavelength of adenosine diphosphate, ATP, ADP, the most important molecule in the body, in the switch. And you get the exact only 2 frequency peaks that cause photosynthesis. I'll show you the picture of that in a second. You get exactly the British foot and the definition of sacred dimension, because sacred dimensions actually are only a way to produce charge implosion, the definition of the sacred. you get virtually exactly the known Schumann harmonic cascade. You get exactly the Mayer wave in the blood, which is 0.1 hertz. The LF component of the HRV, the most important frequency in the body, 0.1 hertz. You get the Venus year, Earth year, galactic year, precessional year, almost exactly. Hello, these waves fit the caduceus of phase conjugate charge collapse. Therefore, they create negentropy. Hello, charge implosion. It's fun stuff. So that's the core of my new book and the physics. And you can investigate that physics, and we'll see. Maybe I'll show you a picture of the 3 radii of hydrogen. It was a new equation: 3 Planck times Golden ratio, exact exponents, 3 exact radii of hydrogen. I was so cool, so pleased when I tripped over that one. It sort of made my day. Anyway. So this is another graphic there. You see that this is my equation here. These are the harmonics in blue. I'm sorry, the print small, particularly my equation, 2.78, 4.5, 7.29, 11.8, and 19.09. So harmonics, my equation in blue. Bottom here, the green peaks, 3, 7.8, 3, 14, and 20 hertz, are the harmonics known and measured of the Schumann harmonic cascade. Oh, they're both imploding. Hello. And guess what that predicts? The exact frequencies of the brainwave harmonics, again, Golden ratio, which produce vision, I mean peak perception. If that's not a frequency recipe, I don't know what is. In fact, the Schumann harmonic cascade is the brainwave harmonic cascade that produces bliss, perception, peak perception, and vision. And that's by measurement, it's by equation. That's cool. So this is another slide of the same thing. So this is maybe the print's a little bigger here. That's all you see. So blue harmonics equation, green harmonics Schumann cascade. So this is the cascade that makes this implosion work. And this is the fun stuff. So we had a lot of fun with this because we think we understand how to emerge from chaos. So this is showing you some of the details of what we just discussed. This is the wavelength of adenosine diphosphate. Remember, ADP, ATP is the quantum bandwidth teeter-totter stair step. And your living cells do that up-down teeter-totter every time they want to store and retrieve a dollar bill. I mean, energy. So it's a key signature. In fact, if you scan the body for that wavelength, you can replace every hospital scanner. Bob Dratch proved it, microwave scanning emission technology, because the radiance from the body of ADP to ATP is the identifier of biologic bliss. You can measure Kundalini with that microwave too. That's another story. So ADP, this key biological molecule, adenosine diphosphate, the wavelength there, 1.91 angstrom, bang on my equation, which produces 1.93 angstroms. You see it? So, and here is the LF and HF component of the heart rate variability, the most important frequencies in the heart. And guess what is predicted by my equation? LF component of the, which is also the Mayer wave, by definition, the natural resonance frequency of the blood, so there's nothing more important about blood flow than Mayer wave, which also is the key frequency to breathe, which produces the 0.1 hertz, called the Mayer wave, which is the HRV-LF, which is the only definition of heart coherence, even in the simplistic work of the HeartMath Institute. They only teach 0.1 hertz breathing, that's it. So 0.1 hertz, LF, 0.251 hertz, HF, heart rate variability key frequencies, bingo, my equation. Isn't that fun? So, I'm just showing you the detail now. Remember, we're talking about the spine liquid pump, sacrocranial pump therapy. The therapist puts their finger on the spine liquid, the fascia, and inserts their attention, which is centripetal. And I have seen children have a miraculous cure when 8 different sacrocranial therapists hold they do point holding. They touch and hold the body on the fascia, and they add their attention, and the sacrocranial pump emerges from chaos. Because of the centripetal force of their attention, sacrocranial pump therapy, Upledger's work. We taught this in Iceland and Italy and all over, speak at those conferences. And sure enough, I've seen kids in South Spain, kids just, all kinds of difficulties and learning problems and disabled and just miraculous cures. I have personally witnessed when several different sacrocranial healers just simultaneously put their fingers and they feel this low frequency pumping in the body, the sacrocranial pump, and then they insert their attention. And until no one knew how that works. Now we know. They insert their attention in the body, makes it centripetal, and now the spine liquid pump emerges from chaos and the harmonics get organized. remember, if your spinal liquid pump, sacrocranial, is pumping, clinically impossible to be depressed. How do you emerge from depression? Pump your spinal liquid. And if that goes to climax, it's called Kundalini, yoga, bliss. And so these are the well-known, published, documented harmonics of the spinal liquid pump causing vision, a frequency recipe. The long tidal 0.01 hertz, the mid tidal 0.041 hertz, and then the key one, the Mayer wave, 0.09 hertz. Well, 0.09 by equation, 0.1 hertz by measurement, the Mayer wave. And then the high frequency of the spinal liquid pump is called the base nominal sacrocranial tidal, which is 8 to 10 cycles per minute. And guess what all those harmonics have in common? Hello, they're predicted by my equation, which is in red down here. So you see, this is the snake charmer that works. So this other slide describes the same thing. So this is the body's very long wave enveloping the bliss mechanism controlled by the coherent yogi breath. All of this makes a charge implosion that's negative. And teaching people how to breathe like this, when you remember your breath is your way of controlling your heart rate, because when you breathe in, your heart's up a little bit, and you breathe out, your heart rate goes down. So your breath is your heart control. Any yogi can tell you, but also physiologists can tell you. And when you do these breathing cycles correctly, called iThrive.com, I-T-H-R-V-E right here, .com, you can teach people to pump their spinal liquid and do the Mayer wave and have bliss. So it's a bigger slide, what we saw earlier. This is the print's a little bigger here. So this is the equation, Schumann resonance, sacrocranial harmonics, and the alpha, beta, theta, all predicted as this frequency recipe for attention. And as we mentioned, just showing the slide, I teach the biophysics of Kundalini. I've been doing that for 30 years. The major article is goldenmean.info/Kundalini, and that's measurable in the microwave, by the way, and measuring the sacrocranial. And I was in Bentoff's lab when we measured it with capacitive accelerometrics, which is fun, but that's another long story. But anyway, so he showed that the spine liquid pump is a pendulum that you stalk. Stalking the Wild Pendulum is the title of the book on the biomechanics of Kundalini, which is basically the frequency recipe of peak bliss. And he measured the mechanism. The spine here, actually no, here we're measuring the aorta, the largest blood vessel in the body from the heart down to the aortic crotch. He measured this capacitive accelerometrically, and I can explain that I don't think you want me to explain. And sure enough, the aorta is like a violin string, and when you play it with the breathing and ultimate relaxation, Kundalini, the low frequency of the heart measurably phase lock the ventricle liquids of the brain, and then you get horny. I mean, then the ventricle horns actually get sharp, like Moses and Lucifer, actually. And so that's actually just a model of Kundalini, that you're crystallizing the ventricle liquids, which produces peak vision. And there's a frequency recipe to that called the frequency recipe to create vision. Oh, isn't that cool? So you can study the physiology of Kundalini is very relevant to vision when you're ready for that conversation. So now I'd like to insult every scientist in the room. Hi. So this is how all physics classes of present science should begin. We, the physics community, offer the sincerest apologies for the scandal of how useless and misinformed current physics literature is to the survival of humanity. We need to warn our children in advance that unless they answer these urgent questions, completely obscured by the idiocies of modern physics, there is little hope for the survival of our species. We recognize, these physicists at least should, how shocking it is after decades of arrogance when in fact our physics community currently does not know why an object falls to the ground, what electric field causes gravity. We'll see in a moment the dark matter, dark energy hypotheses are scandalously absent any evidence. Even 5-year-olds should laugh. Physics doesn't know why matter comes to life, what field effect causes life. Physics doesn't know why anything emerges from chaos. Remember, even though in phase conjugate optics it's been measured replicably that you produce negentropy, but no one has a clue why. So, It is like a horror movie having physics classes teach kids that the whole universe is condemned to entropy. Oh, scares the hell out of me. I'm not sending my kids to those classes. No, because we know the origin of biologic negentropy. Oh, it just happens to be the title of my book, excuse me. Physics doesn't know what holds anything together. What electric fields cause centripetal force? Physics doesn't know. This is a scandal, and our kids' survival is at risk. Hello. And physics doesn't know what electric field, what electric frequencies cause vision. Okay, this is a problem. So physics also doesn't know, and that's the climax of this literature, what part of your aura can survive death measurably. And this is the climax of this work. So if you implode, hey, Ave, the breath of charge takes flight, perfected charge distribution conjugates longitudinal EMF. And that's just a clue to the next part of this lecture. So, science agrees, see the magazine covers here, the symmetry of mass in the universe is clearly arranged as fractal and dodeca. Okay, so here is New Scientist magazine right here, announcing the universe is fractal. And by the way, many physicists already agree fractality causes gravity, but they don't know how. And here is Nature magazine announcing the universe is dodecahedron, which is, by the way, if you stellate a dodeca inside out, outside in, dodeca ecosa, dodeca ecosa, dodeca ecosa, the only possible 3D fractal, this is our Star Mother kit. goldenmean.info/kit. So if you stellate a dodeca ecosa, recursively, you produce the only possible three-dimensional fractal, which, by the way, is this picture on the cover of Nature magazine, announcing that's the geometry of the universe. And I discovered that if you take that dodeca ecosa, dodeca ecosa, dodeca ecosa, only possible three-dimensional fractal, and you take the X, Y, and Z coordinate value of every vertex in that nest, and it's a simple power of golden ratio, just like my equation. So, what I'm saying here is, if that's the exact geometry, that's, first of all, science agrees the universe is dodeca and the universe is fractal. Nobody argues. Cool. And that just happens to be exactly the geometry which phase conjugate gravity theory predicts would cause gravity, and by the way, vision also. So this is exactly the geometry which phase conjugate gravity theory predicts would account for the extra gravity present. In other words, physicists had this problem. It puts the dark matter fantasy in the trash. Physics had the problem. There's too much gravity around. Oh, I think there's probably too much vision around too. They didn't account for that one either. So there's too much gravity around, so physics came up with this ridiculous idea, which 5-year-olds should laugh, and they call it dark matter. They don't have any data, no evidence, no nothing. It's just that there's too much gravity around. We need an excuse for that. We're going to call that excuse dark matter, and we're going to fantasize for a while. That's called dark matter. So I say that idea goes in the trash because now we know where the extra gravity came from. The universe is dodeca and the universe is fractal, proven in physics. And now we know, thanks to me, that dodeca fractality is the cause of gravity. Anyway, I just think it's cool. I think it's fun. And I like, teasing these guys a little bit. So, and the other point I would make is that the golden ratio theory of gravity, and therefore vision, also says that if you measure velocities faster than light, they will be golden mean ratio multiples times the speed of light. That's what my theory of gravity requires. Well, it just so happens that Professor Raymond Chow very famously made hundreds, or at least lots of measurements with called superluminal, faster than light tunneling. Actually, tunneling is actually recursive embedding, which is actually phase conjugation. And so he measured these tunneling velocities faster than light, and sure enough, they were almost all his measurements were between 1.5 and 1.7 times c, the speed of light. Guess where golden ratio is? 1.618 times c, the speed of light. In other words, Professor Raymond Chow proved my theory of gravity already. So, and therefore vision. So I call this symptoms of Einstein-induced insanity. Remember, I promised I was going to insult every physicist in the room. So, so symptoms of Einstein-induced insanity by Dan Winter, fractalfield.com. A, not having a clue why objects fall to the ground. Perfected charge compression's golden ratio recursive constructive heterodyning of phase velocities produces the acceleration of charge towards symmetry center named the gravity and vision. And B, the other symptom of Einstein insanity, thinking the speed of light is a speed limit. In fact, velocities faster than light are routinely measured, we just talked about it right now. C, thinking it takes infinite energy to go through the speed of light. No. Phase conjugation produces superluminal longitudinal electromagnetic, the bottom right picture here, which we hope to discuss. So it doesn't take infinite energy to go through the speed. Not if you phase conjugate down to the Planck threshold right here and take the transverse wave to the longitudinal electromagnetic right here at the Planck threshold, then the energy required to go through the speed of light is perfectly efficient. And there's optimized translation of vorticity. And so the physicists are wrong. It doesn't take infinite energy to go through the speed of light. Sorry. D, thinking all action at a distance is spooky. This is a quote from Einstein. He was wrong. Action at a distance is not spooky. In fact, longitudinal interferometry wave mechanics produces action at a distance all the time, superluminally, and that's the mechanism of every single spiritual tradition out there. So if you don't understand longitudinal wave mechanics, you of course cannot understand spirituality or action at a distance, so you, like Einstein, call it spooky, when in fact there's a very specific, for example, if you do it at sunrise and sunset, you get more longitudinal embedding, and therefore you get action at a distance. And that's true of Therify.net, our plasma technology, which I will show you pictures in just a moment. So action at a distance is not spooky. Sorry, Einstein, wrong term. F, not having a clue what the ether is made of. The ether is a universal compressible media which behaves like a superfluid, and it is a compressor superfluid whose only property is that it stores inertia of compression. And that compression and rarefaction of the ether's compressible superfluid is called charge. Compression and rarefaction of the ether is named charge, and when you rotate charge, you store inertia, the only definition of mass, and when you rotate charge, you have a period, the only definition of time. And that's going to be very important when you understand how synchronicity happens, because you simply create that charge transfer by rotational embedding, conjugation optimized, defining all synchronicity. G, Einstein insanity. Incorrectly and weirdly believing space-time is somehow bent. Wrong. Instead of clearly understanding precisely what is bent by gravity, for example, is the compressible charge wavefront trajectory. GH. Last one. Not understanding that both mass and time are both created and defined simply by the inertia and period of charge rotation. So, for example, the change of clock speed in the presence of acceleration, sometimes named gravity, is simply a change of spin density and spin rate. So once you understand charge rotation defines time, you didn't want to get into all this physics today. You wanted to talk about vision, didn't you? Excuse me. So gravity is the other most essential force in the universe, which causes compression, like vision. So gravity causes perception. How are we going to learn what causes perception in life if we cannot figure out why objects fall to the ground? I've said this already. What are the other directly related problems that are the other essential centripetal and negentropic forces? Life force, consciousness, vision, perception, electronegativity, photosynthesis. These are all electrically centripetal and negentropic. So if you do not understand what the cause of one is, you won't understand the cause of any of them. So this is repeating what we said already. All we need to do to understand what causes focus is what causes gravity. Not only does contemporary physics not have a clue what electric field causes objects to fall to the ground, they don't even have a hypothesis. So this is arrogance plus ignorance equals fatality. Look, scientist community, since you don't know why objects fall to the ground, you'll never know what causes vision. So please, let's get it together. So life is negentropy, death is entropy. There is a path out of chaos, and we must teach it. So I do not forgive my physics professor for not telling me I must learn why objects fall to the ground, or I will forever be stupid. Otherwise, not only will I never learn the cause of gravity, I will never learn the cause of perception. This concludes my summary of modern physics. Speaking of arrogance. Okay. Okay, time for a short story. I used to drive home from work with my dear old dad, and we stopped at this farmer's house, Farmer Zittel. And we found out that he had gone to the doctor, hospital on that day, I think, to be diagnosed. And he was diagnosed that his kidneys had a problem. He couldn't urinate properly. But he didn't realize that. In fact, the reason he went to the doctor that day was because his vision was failing. So his vision was failing, goes to the doctor. Doctor tells him the reason your vision is failing is you can't pee. I mean, you can't urinate. I mean, your kidneys aren't working right. So what's the relationship? Well, this is a complicated medical question, but I say that one aspect of this problem is that when you urinate, your body is removing the liquids which prevent the dielectric constant of the blood to be efficient. This is electrical engineering. Maybe you didn't want to hear electrical engineering today. I'm sorry, I talk like an electrical engineer. But dielectric constant is the efficiency of the insulator between the plates of the capacitor, which allow the capacitor to ring efficiently. And that is why your clothing in your house must be made of biological material if you want to have vision. Yeah, no, a simple experiment. The same experiment in which you removed the sunlight from your kid's class and you created vision, attention. I mean, sorry, you installed sunlight in your child's class. You create vision, perception, attention span measurement. Then you tell those same children, now take off your shoes. Get grounded. All grounding is access to fractality, charge distribution efficiency. So grounding is access to a fractal for electricians and psychologists. So you get the charge distribution efficiency, grounding, by taking off your shoes, and you create vision. It's been measured. Finland, they had all the kids take their shoes off. Oh, revolution in the classroom. Hello, what was that? It's called grounding. Read the book Earthing, which is to say, get in phase discipline with the Earth, access to charge distribution, perfected fractality, and that phase locked to ground, book Earthing, will create vision. It's a frequency recipe. Next thing you do, tell all those kids to take off their synthetic clothes and their metal and install only natural fabrics. Same thing Steiner schools knew decades ago. And you will create vision. Why? Well, actually, they knew that the kids should only touch living fabric and they should only touch wood and natural stone. The children should never even touch anything synthetic. And the reason is the dielectric constant, because charge distribution efficiency is required for vision. So if the kids are installed in a Steiner school, which is, they got the plastic out of there, they got the metal, the electrosmog out of there, and it's all natural fabrics, and they're only touching wood and stone, natural fabrics now, then suddenly their auras can unpack efficiently because the natural materials have a molecular distribution which is called fractal. Remember, every molecule wanted to join that fancy club called life, and so it rearranged itself into a fractal, achieved charge distribution efficiency called dielectric constant, natural material, and then the auras of the children could breathe in and out. They could inhabit the space. And then they had vision. So these are all examples. So there's my equation on top. Many scientists, Einstein for example, agreed that perfected charge collapse causes gravity. What they don't know until me is what symmetry, phase conjugation, fractality perfected, causes this charge implosion and mechanism of creation and negative entropy. Many scientists, Stuart Hameroff, Science Conscious Right, agree that perfected charge collapse causes consciousness. This has also been studied. What they don't know until Dan Winter is what symmetry, phase conjugation, fractality perfected by my equation causes this charge implosion, the essential mechanism of charge collapse, and therefore perception and vision, which is negentropic. So what geometry causes gravity? Mr. Einstein, you take the Planck dimension, Mobley-Coulomb ratio. Yeah, we talked about that. This is, for the scientist in you, these are the exact radii of hydrogen predicted by my equation. And this is what the top-down view of hydrogen looks like by my equation, which is, hello, it's fractal. The center bond of every rung of DNA, also hydrogen in the center of water, fractal. And this is the published Science Journal version of my article, Compressions, the Hydrogen Atom and Phase Conjugation, I wrote with Martin Jones and Bill Donovan, and showing the origin of the hydrogen atom and perfecting compression and phase conjugation by equation. So those are the hard physics. In a way, Einstein correctly identified how gravity is caused. He said the unified field solution was infinite non-destructive compression, charge compression. So if he had known what a fractal was, he would have had his answer. And now, thanks to my equation, we know mathematics correctly describes fractality as infinite compression. But physics, until Dan Winter, failed to describe what is a fractal electric field, fractalfield.com, which is phase conjugation. So the full article on the physics of gravity, fractalfield.com/conjugate gravity. And this is the table of contents of the published physics paper we published on this question, compressions, the hydrogen atom, and phase conjugation, published in the General Science Journal and elsewhere. And this is the web article version of fractalfield.com/mathematics of fusion. And by the way, Mr. Einstein, not only is it possible to go through the speed of light, it is fatal not to. Only an aura coherent enough to implode, phase conjugate into longitudinal and faster than light EMF has any chance of lucid dreaming and taking memory through death. So this is, if you really want to visualize it, remember, if you want to know what a lucid dream is, if you want to know what through death is, if you want to know what ancestral memory is, if you want to know what healing at a distance is, if you want to know what any action at a distance mechanism is, if you want to learn the ultimate military secret, it's right here. You take a transverse electromagnetic wave up here. I don't have my slinking here, but it just goes up and down. So that's a transverse wave right here. And you take that inertia down this golden spiral on the perfected cone, which I proved is how hydrogen works. And that spiral down a cone in hydrodynamic physics is called optimized translation of vorticity, the definition of golden spiral in hydrodynamic physics. And so when you come out the other end of that spiral, specifically at the threshold of Planck, right here, then the up and down inertia of the transverse wave, which will never reach the nucleus, never cause nuclear reaction, and never cause healing, is now translated in vorticity down and emerges as a longitudinal compressional wave like this. Most sound waves are compressional. Electromagnetics, we don't use the compressional component for communication, for example. So longitudinal waves are not well understood in electromagnetic theory. But if you make this longitudinal wave coherent, suddenly you got the Ba from the Ka. I mean your lucid dreaming body. I mean a coherent aura. I mean something that can go through death. I mean ancestral memory. I mean many things. So longitudinal electromagnetics is very key to all this magic stuff. Tom Bearden, very famously, who was my mentor in a lot of stuff, he talked about Priori, the antecedent of our Theraphi. Did lots of work on longitudinal electromagnetics, the key to all field effect healing, for example, and key to our Theraphi.net plasma healing. So understanding longitudinal waves is essential. So the inertia goes up and down, it's called transverse. The inertia goes down the cone, conjugates, emerges out through Planck, through the speed of light, into a longitudinal wave faster than light. And that compressional wave, when the longitudinal waves converge at the nucleus symmetrically, now you have implosive centripetal force, you have nuclear activity, you have healing, you have negentropy, you have faster than light. You can communicate with faster than light longitudinal radio net, which DNA uses, which is why every single sacred site in stone, circle, dolmen, and pyramid is at a dodeca, I mean earth grid magnetic line dodeca, icosa cross point, because that's Druid radio physics. Oh yeah, we saw the slide already, we'll keep going. So, this is just a little graph of the microwave path down the famous EM drive, electromagnetic drive, microwave propulsion, which NASA knows they can make gravity with a microwave cascade, but they don't know the cause of gravity. Oops! NASA, Einstein, Stephen Hawking, none of those guys knows why an object falls to the ground. A bit of shame, really. But anyway, if you make a map of the cascade down the microwave path, trapezoidal, inside the famous EM drive, guess what that is? Phase conjugation, charge implosion. That's how you make gravity. And one example is the EM drive. It's cool. So I was telling you, Tom Bearden famously talks about you got to make longitudinal waves if you want to do any healing electromagnetically. He calls it gravitobiology. Because not only are longitudinal electromagnetic waves the mechanism of all healing and basic implosion, therefore vision, but they are the gravity waves. You need to read the book, Gravitobiology. So, you know, Tom Bearden is an antecedent to my work on longitudinal waves and healing. This is more pictures. You see how the cascade. This is the top-down view of DNA. So if somebody actually asks you, well, you know, you're 5-year-old, why do objects fall to the ground? What you do is you show them this top-down view of hydrogen right here. This is, I wrote the equation. This is the top-down view of hydrogen. Nobody can argue. 10 spirals of golden mean right there. And it's the top-down view of DNA and every living protein and Earth grid, zodiac, and the masses of the universe. Top-down view, all the same. So if you take that top-down view and you add and multiply the wavelengths between the wave nodes recursively, constructively, which only Golden ratio allows, which is why only Golden ratio causes negative entropy and gravity and vision, is when you add and multiply recursively, constructively the wavelength, which is recursive constructive interference, recursive heterodyning, which is how adding becomes multiplying, defining heterodyning, and defining Golden ratio, suddenly you find yourself, you're not only adding and multiplying wavelength, but you're adding and multiplying phase velocities. The speed of the wavefront, like what happens when a surfer is shot like a gun through the tube when the wave collapses. So the phase velocities add and multiply recursively constructively. Also, only when Golden ratio is the symmetry. And that adding and multiplying the phase velocities is named charge acceleration created by Golden ratio compression. And charge acceleration is the only definition of gravity. I'm done now. No, I mean, you know, if you're going up in an elevator, the gravity you feel, there's no experiment can discriminate that from gravity. So if you know how you created acceleration from compression, suddenly you know why objects fall to the ground. And this we talked about here too. This is the Health and Light book. This slide should have been earlier. So, you know, fluorescent light, Health and Light, John Ott. So the frequency signature of vision is related to lighting, because, and if you perfect the lighting based on photosynthesis, and we'll see that slide in a moment, you'll create vision. So this is just to say that I am not the first one to say that phase conjugation causes perception. I am the first one to evolve a wave mechanics. But Steve Lehar, who I know, he's a pretty cool guy, he wrote The Constructive Aspect of Visual Perception, is famous. The principle of visual reification, in other words, visual self-correction, he calls it a reverse grass fire algorithm. Reverse grass fire algorithm. Leads to a phase conjugate mirror principle of perceptual computation. Well, if a physicist were to answer how you create waves to bounce back on themselves constructively, how you design a paint that'll bounce radar, for example. Oh, big military secret, excuse me. You create phase conjugation. And when he was studying the physics of perception, you know, the waves are bouncing back constructively. He calls it reverse grass fire algorithm. Isn't it cool? So phase conjugation and perception, I am not the first one. So this is another example of publications of Steve Lehar on phase conjugation, the mechanism of perception. Basically, charge implosion. So this is some pictures here. This is the, if we have a lens, this is an early version of the brainwave device, and you see there's a harmonic cascade. This is a lady in Australia who had an intense bliss experience, harmonics and Golden ratio. Currently, this is available on flameinmind.com. And this is another visual. So basically, if you get a photon that's traveling as a donut, it's a toroid, and for photons to nest, perfect embedding, Golden ratio, phase conjugation, and embeddability optimized is how the little donut embeds non-destructively in the big donut, which is basically the origin of heart mechanics and brainwave mechanics. In fact, all implosion mechanics, and therefore all mechanics. So you make the little donut Golden ratio the bigger donut, and then the little donut can live inside the big donut non-destructively. Oh, you're in the mind of God. And so you make pictures of that. Make my model work here. Embeddability, and that's not Playboy magazine. So now I want to just give you one more example. We're talking about creating vision. So this is another evidence of a phase conjugate model of perception and vision. So we're using the dyslexic brain as evidence of phase conjugation. Remember, phase conjugation was those vortex, they implode at center. We call that two pine cones kissing noses. So here's the two pine cones, the two vortex nests perfectly. Visualize the electrical relationship between the two hemispheres right here. So sharpening perception must sharpen where the two pine cones kiss. Now we're going to use dyslexia as an example. So in the normal brain, it is known that there's actually less wiring across the corpus callosum than in the dyslexic brain. You can check the literature, check me on this, but the literature concludes that the amount of wires, nervous connections between the right hemisphere and left hemisphere, is greater for the dyslexic. However, that slip knot of where those wires cross is not tied so tightly. Result? Dyslexics are generally more creative. Da Vinci. More information gets from right brain intuitive to left brain logical. Remember, right brain intuitive, centripetal. Right brain intuitive, centripetal. Left brain logical, centrifugal. So it has gone through the vortex, and it's the vortex that does the sorting. The logic is how tight you tie the slip knot. So with the dyslexic, there's more creativity, more gets right from right left, but less focus, less ability to sort. That's very important. So because in dyslexia, the two pine cones do not come to such sharp focus because there's more wires there. So evidence that I'm right about this is that if you teach, and this is my friend Deborah Lawrence, her book Infinity Walk, and the website is infinitywalk.org, and here's the slide, and we teach seminars on this, that if you do a figure 8 walk, now what you're doing is as you walk around a figure 8 with some discipline and hopefully rhythm, going clockwise and then counterclockwise, alternating, and when you cross that center, you're tightening that slip knot. So you teach children, this is actually therapy that's play, it's wonderful and they love it. So you teach children to do this activity, but then also ideally they are putting their opposite hands on opposite knees as they're walking this disciplined figure 8. And then ideally you even see how he's doing this. He's watching the TV or watching a screen perpendicular to. So you create absolute with respect to relative vision. And if you do that exercise correctly, after just a minute or two, the top center of your head will get hotter because you're forcing the blood flow across hemisphere, just like is medically known for the cross crawl. You teach a kid to cross crawl and they learn to read quicker. The same thing. So if you teach a child who has dyslexia how to do this infinity walk therapeutically for, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes a day for like a week, in a week or two, the dyslexic child will have advanced in reading skills by several grade levels. It's been measured many times. So that's old news. The information I'm presenting here is why. Because when you did that cross crawl, did the figure 8 in your brain blood charge flow and tightened that slip knot, you sharpened the perception because the phase conjugation sharpened the pine cones kissing noses. Now this is a more esoteric, and I'm just going to do this briefly. This is more advanced, but they found that in Mexico and in Brazil, I'm sorry, Mexico, that the Olmec stone heads, seen top here, were made of a basalt stone, which is volcanic, which they had to drag 60 miles. Why did they go to that much trouble? They said the volcanic stone was sacred, but actually the basalt stone, in order to hold the plasma of ancestral memory, was high dielectric constant. And that's what I'm saying is the key, actually. And that's how statuary actually can hold plasma, and therefore you see the eyes glow in the eye sockets. And it's quite a story, but and then the bottom here, I'm talking about the fact that the same Olmec were famous for their very specific type of black mirrors. And we now know why, because John Dee's showstone, scrying stone, and the black coating on the bottom of Nostradamus' scrying cup were the same black mirror, called a phase conjugate mirror. And there's a whole lesson here on how that creates vision. Actually, the short answer is that the phase conjugate mirror material in phase conjugate optics is super high dielectric constant, like barium strontium titanate, for example. And so when you got these two laser beams at angstrom level accuracy, and they have to meet each other exactly opposite at a distance, if you want a phase conjugate, create neg entropy and vision, and time reversal has also been measured in that physics. Anyway, if you want to do that, you need the super high dielectric material. Magic, same as the Olmec heads here, which is the same as the mirror Nostradamus used. So this is a place where the pine cones can kiss noses accurately, the super high dielectric, like the lithium niobate, that phase conjugate dielectric material, which they call niobium crystals in Star Wars, I think. It's a gravity maker, but that's another story. This is just a slide from Korotkov I was describing earlier. The slides could be reorganized, but Korotkov, he's measuring the frequency signature of the brain waves of kids who are able to see without their eyes. And he says the dominant feature is golden ratio in brain waves. That is the point here. That to get the brain wave major harmonics, alpha, beta, theta, delta, into golden mean ratio identifies peak perception and vision. And so golden ratio identified vision. And also here is the mind mirror brainwave literature, very old, in which they identified the peak perceptive creative state, and they actually made a map of the alpha right here. That's on the right here. That's alpha, and that's beta. And this is the picture of the brain wave alpha beta that causes a peak vision. And in fact, the ratio between the frequencies here to here is golden ratio, even though the mind mirror people never figured that it was golden ratio. Their picture had the ratio in it, even though they never knew. So this is some of our earlier work on brain waves and this brainwave signature. This is my work, parallel work on the EKG, harmonic cascades and EKG, which we will talk about later. I'm credited in the medical literature for inventing the concept of heart coherence, because I invented the mathematics for measurement of internal phase coherence called the Cepstrom second order power spectra. We don't need to go into this technical. So this is the history of measurement of creativity and bliss. So even when you place binaural beat sound in golden ratio, you create peak vision. This is an audio frequency recipe for vision. So actually, it's well known, of course, you create this like sub 1 hertz, very low frequency heterodyne between the sound in the right hemisphere, sound in the left hemisphere, and then you make a cascade out of that. Now that frequency is too low to hear, and the wave interference in your headphones is happening only in the liquids inside your head. It's called binaural beat, and this is huge. There's hundreds of websites with binaural beats sound recipes for making bliss. Just happens that we have the best one, binaural sound cascade heterodyne for making bliss and vision, a frequency recipe for vision, the title of this lecture. And if you go to flameinmind.com and click on Flame in Sound, you will see that frequency recipe. And by the way, you don't have to buy the brainwave device. You can very cheaply just buy the sound component. So we're going to talk more maybe about that. But so this is from the mind mirror literature, brainwave picture of bliss based on golden ratio brainwaves. Now we're getting to Therify.net. This is our plasma system, about 3 years old. Now we're in 20 countries creating rejuvenation. What do? We took my equation, those frequencies, and we stuck it in plasma. Now we're done. Well, we did it broad spectrally. We sort of started with Prairie and Tesla and Rife and Lakosky, and we extended that because we discovered they tripped over phase conjugate frequencies, but they didn't know the system. So we did it far more accurately, far more broad spectrally than, say, Lakosky, and we made something far more powerful. And we stick those frequencies in plasma. We create time reversal, rejuvenation, phase conjugate, negentropy. Paul, my co-inventor, Paul Harris, Therify.net, did some study and he concluded that 30% of people who emerged from this Therify plasma report sharpened vision. And this is what it looks like, Therify.net. And we can deal with pain, localized pain. We can usually deal with 1 or 2 sessions. Long-term and chronic pain, we can often help. We don't make medical claims, but there's lots of anecdotal that 5 to 10 sessions over a week or 2, we can often, not always, help people even with chronic pain and dozens and dozens and dozens of other health issues. No medical claims, but we believe we know the physics. Very simple, that we charge the aura with a centripetal and therefore negentropic field. Medicine is clear. Cold atmospheric plasma is therapy for hundreds of wounds, health issues, cancers. Well, what is the best way to make plasma stable and cold? Golden ratio negentropy. In fact, Schauberger knew the moment his device, his vortex implosion, was about to make water, was about to make voltage from gravity, when it spontaneously gets colder. Guess what the tips of our tubes? They spontaneously get colder. Why does phase conjugate charge implosion, literally implosion, spontaneously get colder? The same way every single zero-point energy device works. Because it gets negentropic. What is negentropy? Negentropy is the opposite of heat. So anyway, this ability to, self-organize negentropically, one key that is working is spontaneously get colder, like all these hydrogen energy devices. That's another lecture I do. This is just a slide showing you. I wanted to show you. Here is a frequency recipe for vision. I mean, this is a frequency recipe for photosynthesis here on the right, okay? So if you do a graph of how much photosynthesis do you get in the rainbow spectrum, photosynthesis happens in the orange, 691 nanometer, and in the purple, 427 nanometer. If you want to prevent photosynthesis, use green, okay? So that's why every living plant is green, because it spits out that photon that travels as a torus, and the torus tilts. And if the torus enters the cone of the eye, where perception is, color is perceived as in a cone. Well, if you're an electrical engineer like me, you know that you can only use a cone as an antenna for one thing: measuring phase angle or tilt. So the photons got to be traveling as a torus, because in physics, every wave travels as a torus. So anyway, photosynthesis is identified and proven. If you take those two frequencies, 427 nanometer and 691, they're exactly Planck times integer exponents of Golden ratio. Golden ratio of the 136 and 137 power exactly times Planck predict the only two frequencies that make photosynthesis happen. This is not coincidence. This is my discovery. Photosynthesis is phase conjugate and negentropic, and that is also a key to life, implosion, negentropy, and vision. Now, on the left side slide here, we have a more advanced hypothesis, which will be, of course, controversial. On the right, nobody can argue. How are you going to explain the only two frequencies of photosynthesis, phase conjugate to Planck? Only my equation answers that question. But on the left, you could have controversy. We say that the cause of color is the same physics. The reason color exists, the reason rainbows exist. If you take the optical spectrum, 700 to 350 nanometer, make that an octave, and you assume the photon travels as a torus, I think so, that if you take the distance on that spectrum, 350 to 700 nanometers, and you plot that, and you plot the major colors, violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, and you assume that that is a donut tilting from 0 to 180 degrees, at exactly 90 degrees on that path, you will have green. So it's a right angle. Now we tell it's negative green in psychotronics, and we know green's poison, and green poisons photosynthesis. No physicist could argue, because the 90-degree angle of the photon coming at photosynthesis is poison to photosynthesis, because it can't implode, can't charge collapse. Any astrologer knows that 90 degrees is trouble. Anyway, so, but if you take, but all the other colors, orange and violet, are 45 and 135 degrees, cubic angles. And yellow and blue are exactly 63 and 117 degrees. So just scratch your head about it. Guess what the inside versus outside angle of the face of a dodecahedron are? 63 and 117 degrees. In other words, rainbows exist. Color exists because photon toroids phase conjugate at the Planck threshold, and that's the reason rainbows in color exists. Now, you can call that a hypothesis. I call it physics. This is more from the cover of my book. This is called pictures of phase conjugation in optics, how you make lasers do this. So basically, it's called four-wave mixing, that when you get lasers to converge in exactly a cube, they phase conjugate. And if you take the top-down view of that cube, you see the shadow of a hex, which is pairs of primary colors. And this is why four-wave mixing becomes, here's a practical example. Agnihotra only works at sunrise and sunset because you get this right angle to the sun, and you get longitudinal embedding, and you get healing and negative entropy and magic and fertility. It's really cool. But this is getting advanced, so we're going to move along here. So I'm giving examples now of the big right angle phase conjugate cross point in vision. Here is the optical chasm, and here's that threshold now. But whether you actually have constructive interferometry here, which is actually conjugation, you could make the case that interferometry does not happen at the optical chasm, but maybe at some spectra it does. But of course it does happen in the spark gap between the hemispheres. So, in speaking of the spark gap between hemispheres, so this is from the spiritual literature and the biomechanical literature. Sharpening perception must sharpen where the two pine cones kiss noses. And then there's a whole pineal story as a pine cone, and you could imply that metaphor. Now, I was going to bring this up here about the palate of animals and the opsins, but I'm going to leave that for another lecture here, because that broadening of the spectra of the palate with the opsins present and the molecular geometry of the color sensing opsins in the cone of the eye. Remember, electrical engineers only use a cone to measure phase angle. The only place color is perceived. So there's a whole fun lecture there, but that lecture, and that then relates to why the concentration of the rods versus cones present this phase conjugate climax point in the fovea. But again, advanced material. So examples of commercial success of my book, Origin of Biology. So my equation produced commercial success. That's the point here. Therify.net, our plasma system producing rejuvenation in 20 countries and growing fast. TheImploder.com, we do this in water implosion. I'll show you a picture maybe. And at FlameInMind.com, we do it in brainwaves. And then we do it at FlameInMind.com/FlameInSound. We do it in binaural beats. iThrive.com, remember, we're only using my equation for any of these commercial devices. iThrive.com, we teach breath harmonic cascades to pump the sacrocranial. Again, that same equation. And then we also have technologies for charge implosion as propulsion and as a carbon nano energy generation. That's advanced material. We're not going to go there here, but we have many teams involved. This is some examples of the binaural sound programmability. We've actually have medical literature showing the use of key frequencies to triggerize the sequence of glands, sometimes called the chakras, and why the key sequence of HRV trigger those chakras. And here's Patrick Botti, my programmer for all of our biofeedback apps, teaching this. So here's the Flame in Mind. This is more about the binaural bliss sound. This is just to show you that if you take A-E-I-O-U, I-um, and you say that slowly, I-um, and you plot the harmonic cascade in a three-dimensional waterfall plot landscape power spectra, frequency signature, top right, you get a caduceus. So if you say ohm properly, you actually make implosion. This is the picture of the logo for Therify. It says, the actual picture of the phase conjugate fractal wave function depicted between the two plasma tubes, Therify.net. And on the bottom it says, we apologize if the Medical Association did not know what their logo was for. Okay. So this is talking, now we're going to apply this to life force, and we'll go quickly here because we're running out of time. But so life force, the seed really will not grow unless it electrically is implosive, because it can't suck in the next nutrient. That's the key. So if you make the charge field more centripetal, more implosive, you create life force. So this is our, I took my equation and I did CAD-CAM for 20 years. And I made a perfected implosion vortex nozzle called Schauberger's Dream. And I built a water vortex implosion technology called TheImploder.com. We can typically produce 50% more increase in plant growth, especially hemp, marijuana. And also the dramatic reduction of molecular cluster size, increased spin density, solubility, hydration effect is wonderful for human nutrition. Solution to hydration is many diseases for the Imploder. And even for a spa and a bath, it's powerful. And so you can see that we have several devices, a shower, and we add magnetics for centripetal force magnetically. Now, the end of this lecture is about death. And the question is, how do you create vision through death? And I'm going to show you how that's measured. We have Korotkov's here. Yes, Korotkov's book. So we're on slide number 72. So Korotkov's book is 79. So this is the book, Light After Life, and this is my friend Dr. Korotkov. It's called Die Seele, the soul in German. And this is measurement of how many hours it takes the aura to leave the body if you use cadavers and GDV for fingertip Kirlian, now called BioWell. And D, we conclude that Tibetans are right, 10 and 36 hours is when your aura leaves the body, and this is what your ghost looks like. Now, if you want to get into that distribution of vision through death, what is the physics? Well, so there is strong evidence that the fractal conjugate electric field causes vision is the same as the fractal conjugate little electric black hole which allows memory through death. Let's start with the data. Ray Moody, I love him. He's a hero. I lecture with him in Italy all the time. Lightafterlife.com. He's wonderful. So he has abundant data. Medical surgeons, many of them, have documented clinically for sure that if the death is relatively peaceful, the visions seen at death will be electrically contagious. That means medical doctors standing over, somebody's dying, and suddenly they're all seeing the same thing, vision. We're here to study the electric field that causes vision. Oh, we just happen to have tripped over the electric field that causes successful death. That is not an oxymoron. So why are the visions seen at death electrically contagious? We know the Hopi, the sacred tribes, the ancient, all put their sacred burial grounds and their pyramids and their Agnihotri and their labyrinths and their cathedrals and their druid phone calls and their aboriginal songlines and dream tracks, all at Earth grid magnetic line cross points, the dodecaecos Earth grid, where you embed longitudinal. So you get embedded in the longitudinal, you get in the charge distribution efficiency called, not only action at a distance, but collective unconscious, communion of saints, ancestral memory, lucid dreaming, remote viewing. All of these things are enabled by embedding longitudinal, meaning sunrise, sunset, magnetic cross points, get the four directions lined up. You phase conjugate, and you enable DNA radio to happen. So if you want your burial ground, your ancestral burial ground to work, if you happen to be a good electrical engineer that knows how to design ancestral burial grounds, me, for example, you need to embed these longitudinal magnetic cross points. And remember, when Dr. Korotkov, we're referring to that here, he followed the Kogi to where they made phone calls to ancestors. He measured the fractality of the air, because they needed visions of ancestors, vision of ancestors. And sure enough, the air was fractal, that is charge distribution permissive, meaning phase conjugate longitudinal. This means that your average hospital right here, I went into this hospital in Perpignan, and I have never, ever so immediately felt nausea caused by a building than in this hospital. I had synthetic everywhere, dead air, lots of electrosmog, the wrong frequencies everywhere, preventing vision. So this hospital is where they send people to die, and actually it is literally the definition of hell. There is no better definition of hell, right there, preventing charge distribution efficiency. Charge distribution efficiency is called He Ave, heaven. Oh, I mean plains of Charon. I mean phase conjugate dielectric electron shells of gold powder. No, I mean, so if you want to go to heaven, you need to understand how to design a place for birth and death. And so here is a picture of biologic architecture. Remember, biologic architecture creates vision. Now we know why, because there's a frequency signature to vision. And we have the best curriculum for biologic architecture on the planet, goldenmean.info/architecture, which starts with fractality and African architecture, which is well known. And so there we talk about 3 different ways to measure charge fractality in air. It's very simple. You need to decide if your architect should get a paycheck. Pretty easy, right? You go into the building and you measure the charge in the building to determine if that would cause a seed to grow, and therefore allow a child to have vision. And here's how you do it. 3 different ways to measure charge fractality in space. And you can predict in advance which building will cause a seed to grow. Therefore, whether an architect should get a paycheck. We might have to burn down, we have to throw out the library in every architecture university on the planet, but I think that's a good idea, actually. So here's air in poisonous space, a square metal building. The air is not fractal and charge distribution is prevented. That can be measured with Kirlian, GTV, or our power spectra technology for measuring life force in space, which is all part of flameinmind.com. Here's the same measurement, except in a sacred stone circle or a circle of trees. And look at charge distribution is enabled. So 3 different ways. And then there's the electric field ability to make life. So here's plants, a seed caused to grow. Here's a flower caused to stabilize. This is how you make life force with that frequency recipe, the same one that causes vision. And these are examples of the measurements of life force in sacred space available from flameinmind.com. We spectrum analyze a microvolt, and we can tell what building or tree is going to be alive or dead. In the background here, you'll see the blue, which is the frequencies that should be there because they're Schumann, and here's the white. Those are the frequencies that are there. And so that's how we analyze this. And this slide we showed you already. So then just to finish this thought here. So here is Heinrich Kluwe on the right, and he's interviewed hundreds of people who have just died. LSD experiences, but mostly near-death experiences, NDE. And he said, what did you see? He said, they saw a lattice, a cobweb, and a tunnel, then a spiral, and then it started over. So there's a geometric map to successful dying. And actually, recently, a friend of mine, I'm honoring Dan Schreiber here, died, and he came back through his lucid dreaming partner and confirmed that not only was this correct, but that he heard the audio heterodyne hum sound buzz that went with this, and we know why. So not only is there a vision of death, but there's a sound of death, and we know why. Because the successful black hole required is phase conjugate fractal charge implosion. So, and we credit the artwork here from the famous. And so this is the lattice cobweb tunnel spiral, and now we know why, because you're seeing the braiding algorithms of DNA, the sequence of visions of lattice. You take a cube, you tilt it up, and you make a dodecahedron. So you go from lattice to cobweb, which dodec as a center. And then you take that dodeca down a helix, and that makes a tunnel. And then this helix comes to a point, which is DNA. And then it comes to a point, and then you have a spiral. And then you do it over and over and over. And all you're doing each time is adding a superposed axis of charge spin symmetry, the only possible definition of going to the next dimension. And so basically all death is doing is creating a black hole. It's very simple. So to die successfully, you must create a successful electric black hole. And that enables you to create a charged space, rearrange the biological materials, be pentafractal, and make a magnetic map, to make a building that will enable successful death and vision. Thank you very much. I'm Dan Winter. I'm ready for questions. Appreciate it.